Ludwig has finally started playing Deadlock, and it went as well as he probably expected it to. Ludwig does have a background in League of Legends though, hitting plat, and so he does have a baseline for some MOBA concepts. But Deadlock is one of the hardest competitive games to learn and master, so today, as a former Avernus player who just recalibrated into Oracle, we're going to see how well those skills transfer, and I'm going to give Ludwig a full Deadlock report card. We're grading everything from his laning and movement to his macro and itemization. These are the grades he can get for each category, and it will be based on him being a beginner. So I'm going to break down what he's already doing well, what he should look to learn next, and what every new player can learn from his mistakes. And at the end, we'll see whether he passes and what grade he actually deserves. Ludwig does already have a decent understanding of the basics, since upgrading abilities, souls, and win conditions are all concepts that have pretty similar comparisons in League. What's better is that he's already naturally picking up some of the mechanics as well, like holy shit Ludwig, what a parry! Anyways, I think what would help Ludwig the most as he learns is familiarizing himself with the map. Of course, this comes through time, but I think this will be really beneficial towards him as he learns some more advanced concepts like timings. And I also think it will overall just help his efficiency with moving around the map, since he will not waste time on deciding where to go. Overall for this section, I think he deserves an A tier for beginner, since he does have a very strong understanding of how souls work from League and why you're upgrading ability points. But I would like to see him discover what each ability point upgrade does for a specific character and discover the concept of unsecured souls. For laning, Ludwig does generally have okay positioning, where he'll try to play behind his tower and generally notices when to back up since the wave is crashing into him or the enemy is looking at him for damage. He also tries to play around his limited understanding of the abilities, like here he tried to go for a flame dash but was pressing the wrong button and Abram spun into a wall to counter that. There's a couple areas that I would like to see him improve in though. Firstly, he takes so much trooper damage and even dies to the troopers right here, so I want to see him play behind his wave more or push it before he goes in for a play. Secondly, I want to see him securing his souls and denying the enemy's souls. Just this simple concept alone will put him at such an advantage when he's laning against other beginners. So overall, I think he deserves a C, where he understands the idea of laning, but he does definitely need some work to improve as a beginner. But that's not to say he's bad. It's just laning is such a complex part of Deadlock. Honestly, I'm very surprised at how quickly Ludwig picked up some of the movement mechanics in this game. He very frequently dashes and even dash jumps, which I can't say the same thing for Tim the Tatman. I would like to see him take better care of his stamina sometimes though, such as conserving it before fighting. Besides that, I think Ludwig is pretty solid, so I'd even start recommending some new movement mechanics for him to try. Firstly, I want to see him slide more. Sliding basically goes with every movement mechanic in this game, so I like to see him build that habit now. I mean, it's crazy how useful it is because he could slide after his dash jumps for a bit more distance, slide after mantling, he could slide down every slope. It's pretty much useful everywhere. Secondly, I think he could learn wall jumps. He already has a small understanding by messing around in the hideout, but they're useful to get around to higher places in the map, which is a pretty big difference between Deadlock and some other MOBAs like League. The map just has so much verticality. Overall, I'd go so far to give Ludwig an A because other beginners so often neglect their movement, but Ludwig has shown a pretty natural and good understanding of its importance even as a beginner. This is going to be a pretty short section because Ludwig doesn't really pay attention to it, and I don't blame him. Honestly, for every single beginner, I recommend just finding a build and following it left to right. However, there's one area I would like to see him improve in, and that's understanding the item he's buying. No, I don't expect him to research every item in the game or even seek to buy another item. Just whenever an item comes next in his build, just give it a 10-second read. Nothing crazy. This, over time, will lead to Ludwig eventually learning the items anyway, like understanding that when he buys toxic bullets, he wants to build it up by shooting the enemy. Overall, I'm going to give Ludwig a B in this category because I don't expect every beginner to read 10 billion items, just the one or two that's up next in their build. This is probably Ludwig's strongest section since he comes from League and already understands certain decision-making principles that go into macro. For example, he's a natural split push demon and understands to push objectives, especially after kills. Not only that, but he's already looking at the map and making the decision to come help his teammates and flank when they're already fighting. He has such a good understanding for a beginner that I would recommend for him to be more efficient by taking jungle camps in his downtime so he can maximize the amount of souls he's gaining. Overall, I'd give him an S for this category, honestly, for already showcasing good macro for a beginner in just his very first game. And we're going to follow the good with the not so good. He completely ignores jungle camps, even though he literally plays a Moo in League. So I can't really grade him well on jungling, which is why I kind of grouped in economy. He does a pretty good job at catching waves and making sure they're pushed, but again, most of his souls come from kills and trooper waves. So adding in jungle camps while he's rotating, or in times where there's nothing for him to currently do because his wave is pushed, would make him so much more efficient and would allow him to snowball his games a lot easier, since he would have a lot more farm to show for it. I think overall I'm going to be a little harsh here, since again, he literally plays jungle in League, and I'm going to give him a D and say jungling is probably the weakest part of his game right now. We're going to follow it up with an area I think he does a good job in though. Objectives are obviously important and are part of your win conditions in Deadlock, so it's very great to see him interacting with the objectives on the map. Pushing guardians, walkers, I mean he literally took the urn in both of his games, so that should say a lot. Even in his second game where he's playing against players that already know what they're doing, he's still keeping up and interacting with the rift. I think if he continues playing and interacting with the objectives, he will learn very fast, since Deadlock is a game where doing the objectives are good if you're ahead, and they're also good if you're behind. The rift is a natural comeback objectives, the urn is really good to run, and mid boss is the win condition in a lot of games. And so I think he already has a solid understanding of objectives and how important they are, so I'm going to go ahead and give him an A and just suggest that he continue learning more about the objectives in his future games. Ludwig does okay in team fights, but it's still very clear he's new to the game. The mindset is very, I'm just gonna shoot anyone who's in front of me, which is okay for a beginner and for the character he's playing. But one thing I would like to see him improve is his ability usage. For example, there's multiple times in team fights where he can use his ult, but he just holds it for way too long. Everything else will just kind of come naturally through time and learning more about the game, since it's all kind of character specific, like knowing your role, who you should target, and how you should position. One area he will struggle with when he faces people who kind of know what they're doing is countering. We saw this in the second game he played, where the Haze just kind of hunted him down all game, and so that's partly the reason why earlier I told him just gradually learn the items as you buy them, since buying the correct counter items in this game is pretty important. Overall, I'm going to give him a B here, where he has a solid foundation for understanding, but he should still look to play around his abilities more. And so that brings us to the overall grade. But before that, please make sure to subscribe if you've enjoyed this video so far. It really helps me out, and you can also consider becoming a channel member, so hopefully I can go full time. Anyways, drumroll please. Ludwig passes with a B+, and he's quite solid for a beginner just learning the game. I think the biggest areas he can improve are by firstly sliding more and learning how to wall jump. Movement is such a big part of this game that it should not be overlooked. Also, pay a little bit more attention to the jungle. At the beginning of the game, it's pretty easy at 2 minutes where a small camp spawns to kill the creeps and grab it every time it respawns. Also, at 3 minutes, the boxes and golden statues spawn, so push your wave really hard and then consider grabbing a few of these. Towards the mid to later game, when there's not much to do on the map because you've just pushed your wave and there's no way you can push your walker, just grab the jungle camps that are around, because ideally, you always want to be gaining some sort of advantage, whether it be souls or something else. But that was my personal review of Ludwig playing Deadlock. I really enjoy seeing new people get in the game and enjoy it, so I'm happy that Ludwig seems to be down to play the game some more. If you're new to the game yourself, consider joining my Discord if you need an invite to the playtest or just want a cool place to hang out and learn more about the game. Once I get more members, I'm planning on doing a bunch of cool stuff like community custom games, Q&As, and much more. If you enjoyed watching Ludwig struggle, maybe you'd enjoy the video I did back in March about Tim the Tatman playing Deadlock for the first time. Anyways, see ya.